Look, what I was doing, see, back in the 60s, a lot of young American radicals became Maoists. They loved Mao Zedong. This was in the Vietnam War era. They loved Mao Zedong and they loved Fidel Castro. And they didn't go away. They formed their little communist groups. A lot of them infiltrated the Democratic Party. And they've formed this pro-China network across America that's gone back. And while I was studying this network, I discovered that they were promoting certain candidates for the future. One of them was obviously Barack Obama. Another one was Andrew Gillum, who almost won the governorship of Florida. Another one is Stacey Abrams, who almost won the governorship of Georgia. Another one is Cory Booker, the senator from New Jersey. But the prize, the top one right now is Kamala Harris. She came out of this Maoist network. Her parents were Maoists. She went to radical organizations, even as an elementary school child. She was raised in Maoism. That's how she thinks. That's what she is. And I've traced this going right back from before she was born to right now. Those Maoist connections, that communist background has never altered. She is the communist candidate to take down America. The only color that counts here is red, basically.
Exactly.
Look, Kamala's parents, Shyamala Gopalan, she was a very left-wing scientist from India. Her father was an economist from Jamaica. They married, they grew up in Berkeley. They married in Berkeley. Kamala grew up in Berkeley. But Donald Harris was recruited to Stanford University in the 70s as an affirmative action Marxist. They didn't have enough Marxists on faculty. So this group of radical communist students called the Union for Radical Political Economics, which is very close to what we now call Democratic Socialists of America, Ocasio-Cortez, those people. They mounted a campaign to recruit Donald Harris as the best Marxist economist they could find and got him put permanently on the faculty. So he wasn't one of many, he was the Marxist for Stanford. Can you believe they didn't have enough Marxists already? They've probably got thousands now.
Right.
But that's what he was. He's a full-blown Marxist, never denied it publicly, wrote books all about Marxist history, Marxist political economy. There is no doubt ever that he is a Marxist, none whatsoever. Like Barack Obama. See, the Maoist strategy was to utilize America's racial differences to run candidates of color. The strategy is based on Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition strategy of the 1980s, which was completely run by pro-Chinese Maoists. You get the progressive whites, progressive Latinos, progressive blacks, progressive Asians, progressive Native Americans, progressive gays, all the colors of the rainbow. That's why they called it the Rainbow Coalition. And you run candidates of color to bring this coalition together. Now, when Jesse Jackson ran, he got, I think, second in the Democrat primary, but minorities were 19% of the population then. Now they're close to 40. And this is why they encourage illegal immigration, for instance, to build that up. And I'm only talking in their terms. They're all about race. Race is everything. We believe people are individuals. They believe people are blocks of power.
Right.
So she was chosen out and mentored as a very young person to bring her into this sort of strategy. Like, as a young girl, she used to go to the Black Woman Organizing for Power in Berkeley. It was a black Marxist revolutionary social club. And they would have revolutionary speakers there. And they supported Ron Dellums, the Marxist who became the member of Congress for that region. But this was a revolutionary place. She was going to, when she was 8, when she was 9, 10, every Thursday night, her and her mother and sister would go along to this place. So she was steeped in this. And then she went to college and she was hanging around with the radicals. And then she came back to Berkeley, back to the Bay Area, and she took up with Willie Brown. Now, everybody concentrates on the fact that he was 60, she was 29. He gave her some jobs that made her a lot of money. But nobody talks about the fact that it's just got out of bed. Her boyfriend Willie Brown, was a Communist Party supporter from the 1950s to the early 2000s, right to the time where he was with Kamala, then he became Communist China's best friend in the Bay Area. So he has a 60-year communist history. So why did Kamala Harris, connect to this man of all others? But the biggest, we could talk about that in a minute, but the biggest connection is to a very rich San Francisco activist called Steve Phillips. He's a lawyer, a former communist, who married into a very wealthy family in San Francisco, the Sandler family, the Golden West Savings and Loan fortune, $2 billion, which he then used to put into the progressive movement, to put into the set up organizations like Center for American Progress, ProPublica, etc., and also to back candidates of color, because he was part of the Rainbow Coalition. He was in the League of Revolutionary Struggle at Stanford, where he was very close to Maya Harris. He was friends of the Harris family. So he started putting money, he put the money behind Barack Obama that got him ahead of Hillary Clinton in the 2008 primaries. He financed Andrew Gillum. He financed Stacey Abrams. He financed Cory Booker. He's financed ballot measures all over the country. But he was completely behind Kamala Harris. This Maoist got her the district attorney's job in San Francisco. He got her the attorney general's job in California, got her into the California Senate, got her into the US Senate from California, and got her on the VP ticket and then into the White House. He's been behind her all the way. He is her Marxist, Leninist sugar daddy. Well, look, you Google his name, Steve Phillips, right. Kamala Harris. He's writing op-eds in her praise now in the last 3 days. He is praising her now. But see, Steve, you talk about Soros. Steve Phillips used the money from the Sandler family to join and help to set up the Democracy Alliance.
Right.
That's a network of about 150 billionaires, George Soros, Tom Steyer, a whole bunch of billionaires who have then gone out and funded these radical candidates, funded right. Hillary Clinton. So Steve Phillips is a key member of the Democracy Alliance. And so he is the brains. He wrote this book called Brown is the New White. Nancy Pelosi endorsed it, Barack Obama endorsed it. It was a New York Times bestseller. And what he talked about was using racial politics to bring about permanent socialism in America. Right. So you basically run these hardcore left-wing candidates of color. Nobody can attack them because you'd be called a racist. And then you get the whites, all the progressives of color together, and you form a majority. And so what the plan is basically get Kamala into power, then give citizenship and voting rights to 30 million illegals, who will then vote 80% for the person who gave them citizenship and voting rights. And that'll be 25 million new Democrats. And that's the end. That is when they have permanent power over America. So America will be ruled by China through this coalition. See, it started in San Francisco because San Francisco's got a big Chinese population, right. But they were always very, very anti-communist China. They were pro-Taiwan, they didn't like communist China. In 1972, the Maoist students, Chinese students who were supporting the Viet Cong and the Vietnam War and all this kind of thing, set up a group called the Chinese Progressive Association in San Francisco. And it's like a big voter registration organization. It's like an acorn, but it's a big community organization. And you cannot get elected in San Francisco without their support. So they've controlled the city council, they've controlled the local Congress members, etc. And so this group set up an organization called Asians for Black Lives. And by the way, they work completely hand in glove with the Chinese consulate. They set up a group called Asians for Black Lives, which wrote the manual for Black Lives Matter. Alicia Garza, the founder of Black Lives Matter, was part of the Chinese Progressive Association. So the Chinese Progressive Association essentially started Black Lives Matter. Right. That's a Chinese operation. And by the way, Kamala Harris is very close to Latifah Simon, who's now running in the Bay Area to replace Barbara Lee. Latifah Simon is best friends of Alicia Garza. And Van Jones was part of this mix as well, this Maoist grouping in San Francisco that gave us Black Lives Matter. And if anybody's seen 2000 Mules by Catherine Engelbrecht, how they were how these radical left-wing nonprofits were using Black Lives Matter activists to stuff ballots in key states, in the big cities and key states, to win the election for Biden-Harris. Well, that's very accurate. And these are all connected to the Chinese Progressive Association. They started Black Lives Matter, caused chaos. Then they used the energy of all these young black kids and Latino kids who were told Trump's a racist, Republicans are Nazis. The only way to stop racism was to vote for Biden-Harris. And they were then used through groups like Lucha in Arizona, which made 8 million phone calls and knocked on 1.8 million doors. Black leaders organizing communities in Wisconsin, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania Stands Up in Pennsylvania, New Georgia Project in Georgia, Detroit Action in Michigan. These are all connected to this Chinese network. Wow. So they claim credit for winning the election for Biden-Harris. So we look at all this electronic stuff and I'm sure it happened, but we overlook under our very noses the same people that put Kamala Harris in power are the same people running the big voter registration organizations in the key swing states to flip those states to elect Biden-Harris. Well, that's 100% right. Jim Clyburn, the very senior congressman from South Carolina, has a deep communist background. He went to Cuba in 2000 and arranged for scholarships for 140 young American Marxists to do 7-year scholarships, medical scholarships in Cuba. Now, they're all over the country creating chaos. But see, this was the thing. Kamala was supposed to be the candidate in 2020. She was the Rainbow Coalition, Steve Phillips candidate. But she was so unpopular, she got no traction. And then Bernie Sanders was getting out of control and looked like he would get the nomination. And he's too openly communist. People saw through him. And so they were worried about that. So when it was almost over, the only state that was going to decide the nominee was South Carolina. So Jim Clyburn called out the black population of South Carolina to vote for Joe Biden, the only person that could still beat Bernie, to defeat Bernie. So Biden gets the nomination. All these voter registration organizations go into overdrive. Biden gets in by hook or by crook and then makes Kamala his VP candidate. Everybody knowing that Joe's not going to last, but Joe lasted a bit longer than he thought we would, probably because he didn't want to go to jail, probably because he wanted to hang on and hang on and hang on. Yeah. I would love to see what severance package he negotiated. Right. But that's how it happened. That's how Kamala got. I was saying in 2018 that Kamala was going to be on the ticket in 2020. And people said, oh, don't be crazy. Nobody likes her. I said, that doesn't matter. Right. It's been decided, because I was monitoring these pro-Chinese networks. And I'd seen what they did with Gillum and Stacey Abrams. I saw what they did with Cory Booker and Obama. And Kamala was their choice. Well, look, it was interesting. Before her, it was Terrence Henan. He was the district attorney before her. Well, he was the communist who helped Willie Brown first get elected. He got the young communist youth to get Willie Brown elected. So then he's in there. Kamala comes along, knocks him off his perch because he was done. He was spent. And she was pretty tough in some areas. She was pretty nasty towards certain offenders. But I think this was trying to build up her prosecutor tough cred, because she knew she was going to run as a leftist. And people are going to put her background against you. She said, well, I was a tough prosecutor. I was a no crime, no nonsense, tough prosecutor, right? And so that gives her some, like some leftists go into the military, like Pete Buttigieg, for instance, go into the military. Well, I'm a soldier. I must be a patriot. I'm a prosecutor. I must be a conservative. No, I think she put a lot of people in jail who shouldn't have been in there to bolster her own career in the future. She knew she was chosen for great things at a very early age, just like Obama did. Maya Harris was at Stanford University in the early 90s. She was basically working, she knew Steve Phillips. She moved in the same Maoist circles. She married a man called Tony West. Now, Steve Phillips helped Tony West get a job under Eric Holder, Obama's Attorney General, but number three in the Justice Department, I think. He defended John Walker Lind, the Taliban defector.
Right.
He did a lot of stuff. Tony West did a lot of left-wing stuff, was put in place by Steve Phillips. So now Maya Harris has gone out there, obviously campaigning for her sister, which we all understand,
right.
But she is very much part of this operation, of the Steve Phillips operation. She was brought up in the same communist household that Kamala was. Well, look, Jesse Smollett's family, I think his mother was very close to Angela Davis, the California
right.
communist, who was part of this whole Northern California communist thing.
Right.
So the communists have a long history of creating hoaxes, creating scams to justify racism. The lacrosse case, the lacrosse
yes.
rape case. Like back in the 50s in Louisville, Kentucky, at those days, blacks were not allowed to move into certain white areas. So a communist couple arranged for a black man to move into a white area to create this big racist issue. And then his home got burnt down. Well, it wasn't a white person. It wasn't one of the neighbors who burned his home down. It was the husband of the communist family burnt the house down, and he got convicted and jailed for it to blame, to create this racism, to amp up the racism. Willie Brown was very much part of the same thing, working with Dianne Feinstein, by the way, in the early 60s to break the racial property covenants in Northern California, in the Bay Area, which got him his political start. So we know there was racism, we know there is racism, but their goal is not to finish racism. Their goal is to find any example they can, or make up examples if they can't find them, and pick that scab. Just amp it up, right. amp it up, amp it up. Maoist communism is more focused on race than it is in class. Wow. And the old Soviet communism was the workers would rise up against the capitalists. Maoist communism is the oppressed peoples of color will rise up against the white racist oppressors. So Kamala Harris will be the most if she wins, she'll be the most race-focused politician ever. This is her whole thinking, Maoist, race-based communism, which is why when Black Lives Matter was going on, she talked about we need more of this, we need more marches, we need more rallies, She was right at that, because that was a Maoist communist operation, and she was 100% on board with it because she was a Maoist, race-based communist. Her parents were in the part of a group called the Afro-American Association, which spawned the Black Panther Party, which was a pro-Chinese Maoist group.
Right.
So that's where her parents come from. So she knows no other way of thinking. It's all about race for her. Black people are eternally oppressed, and the only way we get justice is to take complete power and mass reparations, affirmative action on steroids, flood the country with millions of illegal immigrants, and destroy white racist America once and for all. That's the way she thinks. That's not the way, that's not reality. That's the way she thinks. Well, they don't want a solution. A friend of mine was talking to a Latino guy, a Democrat, when he was a Democrat, and he said, look, this is how we can fix this problem. You know, Latinos are not getting good education. This is how we can fix it. And the guy said to them, we don't want to fix it.
Right.
We want continuous misery so we can stay in power. You know, look, Kamala Harris is exploiting her own people to get power. And she doesn't want prosperous black communities. Look, what happened when her Maoist communist friends burnt Ferguson, Missouri to the ground? The first places they burnt down were all the black businesses.
Right, exactly.
Because they don't want middle-class black people. They don't want people having professional careers and getting out of the ghetto and going on to great things. They want people in the ghetto voting for them. They'll get a few handouts, a few crumbs here and there. Just keep voting Democrat, keep us in power. And that's why they encourage this racism and this dependency mentality. That's why they hate Trump.
Yeah.
Because Trump did more for the black community than any president in the last century since Lincoln, essentially. And they can't have that because that is their only way to get in power, to keep those minority populations down and under control. When those minority populations start making money and having better futures and educating their kids, they start leaning a bit more conservative.
Right.
They start voting conservative. They start seeing things in a different way. They don't see the victim mentality. They understand that it's just a scam.
Yeah.
She would be the worst thing to happen for the black community in America, for the whole country. But she has no will to help black communities at all. Well, when Obama talked about the fundamental transformation of America, the fact that he was a Marxist, Leninist all his life, has worked with communists all his life, that's what he was talking about. So what a Kamala Harris presidency would mean would be a complete destruction of the US military. So we would be at the mercy of China and Iran and whatever. The complete opening of the borders. So you could drive from Argentina to Canada and not notice a difference.
Right.
The complete destruction of the American middle class, race and affirmative policies on steroids, absolutely on steroids, and racial grievance just through the roof in schools, indoctrination, etc., and political persecution of our enemies on steroids. We've seen a little bit of it under Biden.
Right.
This would be, this would go into absolute steroid because they want to use this to finish us off. This is the final push. Because as I said, if they can legalize 30 million, see, some people say, if we lose this election, we'll come back in 4 years or 8 years. Look, if you get 30 million illegals here, all voting, 24 million of them voting Democrat, and the government persecuting its enemies like crazy, going after anybody who funds conservative causes, you tell me how we come back from that. And his law firm had several leading Chinese Communist Party members on their roll. So they didn't just do business in China, they had Chinese Communist Party members living in America holding key positions in that firm. So do you think there's going to be any standing up to China from a Kamala Harris administration at all? You think China invades Taiwan or the Philippines or attacks Hawaii? What's she going to do?
Right.
Well, with the military that she would have already destroyed by then.
Yeah.
Obama fired 200 top generals and admirals, good, solid guys, replaced them with Princeton sociology graduates. Then with the vaccine mandates and the political correctness, they started driving out all the non-commissioned officers, the mid-level officers. And now they're going to bring illegals into the military, millions of illegals into the military as a road to citizenship. Well, American soldiers wouldn't fire on American troops.
Right.
But a Guatemalan illegal immigrant isn't really he's going to do what he's done well told. That's his path to citizenship.
Right.
So we were not going to be able to stand up to any of our enemies because the military will be gutted. And you won't be able to oppose the government because they will bring the full force of the law against you because they know their ace in the hole is 30 million illegals with citizenship and voting rights. They know we can never beat them again.
Right. Yeah.
But what have they got to worry about? They don't have to worry about the next election anymore.
Right. And it's so crazy how they project everything on Trump and act like, that's what he's saying when we know that that's actually what they're saying. And it's amazing. It's their whole
That's a projection, isn't it? What they accuse us of doing is what they are doing. Plus, they also want to draft your daughters.
Right.
So, but this is the thing. When Trump was in power, Putin was in his box, Xi was in his box,
right.
Rocket Boy kept under control, and the Iranians were terrified, right? So we had 4 years of relative peace because Trump was rebuilding the military that Obama had wrecked, and he was standing strong, right. And they didn't know what the heck he would do, so they kept in their place. So Biden gets in power, who's been China's boy right. For decades, and so what happens? Putin gets out of control, China gets out of control, Iran's starting a war with Hamas in the Middle East, Rocket Boy's now threatening Japan and South Korea. This is no accident. They are doing everything they can to grab as much ground as they can and do as much as they can to stop Trump because they know they'll be put back in their box if Trump gets in control.
Right.
And they're terrified of that. They're making hay while the sun shines. While we're distracted by the election and their senile puppet was doing whatever he told them.
Right.
No, they're not. And it's a global world with China as the enforcer. Right. That's what, and people like these Bill Gates and that, they think that they're going to be running the world in partnership with China. We're all going to be peasants. No, I think Bill Gates will be lined up and shot like everybody else who doesn't behave. I think that's too late for us. No, I think this is the final battle, well, not the final battle. This is a decisive battle between the grassroots people, the people who love the Constitution, love the American idea, love the beauty of what America has achieved. This is the final battle between those and all of those who hate America and want to bring it to its knees to destroy the country. It's communists, Islamists, globalists. They're all working together. They're all interlocking. And the only thing we can do to stop that is to make darn sure Trump gets elected with and get, not saying he'll be the perfect and he's got all the answers at all, but Kamala will finish us.
Yeah.
Trump gives us a chance to go forward. Rebuild the military, rebuild America's independence, rebuild America's energy infrastructure, disband the Department of Education, get the perverts out of the schools, disband the big health apparatus that has been used to tyrannize us, disband digital, get rid of digital currency initiatives, all of that. I think Trump will do a heck of a lot of that stuff. He'll get us out of the World Health Organization, probably out of the United Nations as well. So this is why everything's coming down to this battle in November. Right. Everybody should be praying and working on this. Klaus Schwab, if the World Economic Forum collapsed tomorrow, China would just build another one.
Right, exactly.
Klaus Schwab doesn't control China. China controls Klaus Schwab.
Right.
I can prove that. Klaus Schwab has a bust of V.I. Lenin, the Russian revolutionary, in his office. He's not. Globalism and communism essentially overlap. They're pretty much the same thing. And China is the enforcement mechanism. Right. Some of these big people think they can ride China and we'll use China to suppress everyone else. No, China will destroy them like little ants when it wants to. Well, that's right. Those of us who survive, most of us will be enslaved, but we'll be thinking, where can we go to? Mexico for a better life? Can we go to Guatemala? There'll be people streaming across the border to go to Honduras, Right. But that's, look, what we'll have, and I don't want to just horrify people for the fun of it, we will have North Korea with American surveillance technology.
Exactly.
That is the ideal world that these globalists have in store for us. And they want a much reduced population not for themselves and their families, but for ourselves and our families.
Right.
Look, this is evil incarnate. This is a battle between good and evil. This is a battle between life and death. God and Satan, whatever, the prince of darkness will rule the world.
I know.
Basically. And so that's what they wanted. That's why we are having DEI. You cannot get a contract now with a government company unless you have DEI policies in your company. So all of this is designed to have, so every individual who's allowed to survive will have a score through their life. And if you are caught with a Bible, your score will go way down. If you are caught meeting with somebody you shouldn't have, or saying something between friends that you shouldn't have, that will all be recorded.
Right.
And that will affect your ability to buy and sell, your ability to go to college or school, or even school, your kids' ability. In North Korea, if you commit a so-called hate crime, a thought crime in North Korea, that affects 3 generations of your family. You just don't go to jail for it. Your kids and your grandchildren also get punished for it. So this is serious. A lot of people think, we have persecution. That means we'll go down from having 3 cars to 2, and we'll only be able to go for holidays in the Caribbean once a year instead of twice. No, I'm talking Venezuela would look like a holiday home. Right. Like a picnic. Yeah. You got to understand, America is the enemy of every globalist, every communist, every anti-life, militant radical, every devil worshipper, whatever you want to call them. Everybody who worships evil hates America. Right. And if they get control of this country, they're going to wreak revenge on the people here. Yep. They're gonna establish their dominion. And this all sounds very, a bit hysterical and whatever, but
not to my audience. I'm very on top of this.
Yeah, well, you're right, because and I'll say it again: North Korea with American surveillance technology. You do, and I'm not presuming anybody's religious beliefs, but I think if anybody saw that bullet whiz past Trump's ear, that close, and didn't think the hand of God was on that, I think you'd have to be pretty darn cynical. So I think that's a clear message to us.
I agree.
This country cannot be lost, that this man is a very important man, but not because of him, because of what he represents. Right. This great country that he represents and wants to save. And so I think the message is to all of us. We can't leave it to Trump. We can't leave it to anyone else. Every single one of us has to do what we can, whether it's phone banking or donating or bringing 10 people to the polls or whatever it is. Look, they talk about vote fraud. We all know that's going to happen, but they amp it up to discourage us from even voting. Right. I read the left-wing stuff. I read their magazines. They are freaking out right now. They still think Trump's going to win. Right. Right. But they're trying to tell us it's all over. No, go to the polls, vote, do whatever you can, because God showed us with that bullet. I agree. Exactly. Cool. Well, thanks so much, Melia. Go to trevorloudon.com, my name.com, and the Loudon is Loudon. So trevorloudon.com. It's called Kamala Harris's Communist Roots. So you can pre-order that. But as you say, I've got books there on the senators, on the Congress members, on Biden's background, but also my videos, Enemies Within the Church. Oh, right, it's great. It's been hugely important. That's gone all over the country, exposing the Marxist infiltration of even the evangelical churches now. I know. I know. They know, wouldn't Satan want to get inside God's church, don't you think? Well, thank you. I appreciate you, Mel. Thanks for being a voice for liberty. And thanks to all the viewers for standing up for America. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.